Breath of the Wild was a game that I greatly enjoyed, so you can imagine my excitement once news of a sequel had spread online. However, the reason for this excitement didn't simply come from the fact that the first game was getting a continuation. It was because of the potential. The first game, while fantastic, had a few major problems with it, such as the dungeons, story, and that ending. But the one regarding the story is worth noting, because technically this game does have one of the biggest narratives within the Zelda series. My issues lie with the presentation of it. Having the player go out of their way to find all the pieces of it is something that I greatly enjoy, and it's important that some questions are left unanswered, as it lets the player come to their own conclusions. But Breath of the Wild felt like it suffered from too many questions. So many, in fact, that it felt like stuff was just thrown in without the intention of eventually solving, from mysterious structures to ancient tribes and even the fate of the Triforce. Obviously, I didn't play the game expecting all of these questions to be answered. But if my final battle takes place in a bizarre-looking room consisting of a floor that spells out laboratory, you bet that I'll want to know the story behind it. And this is exactly why I am so excited for Breath of the Wild 2. It's possible that many of the unsolved questions from the first game will finally be built upon, or even answered. In this video, we'll be looking at some of those unanswered mysteries and how the sequel may finally shed light onto them. We only have time to talk about 10 of them. However, if there are any that we missed, then feel free to discuss them in the comments below.
Not much is known about the events that occurred 10,000 years ago, as it's only brought up a couple of times within the game, such as Impa's story paired with the visuals of the tapestry. It recounts the history of both the royal family of Hyrule and Calamity Ganon, along with the creation of Sheikah technology to assist in defeating this ancient evil lurking over the kingdom for centuries. However, the story doesn't end at Ganon's defeat, as the royal family grew to fear the Sheikah and their technology. The divine beasts and guardians would be buried away, and the Sheikah agreed to abandon their technological ways to live normal lives. But some grew to hate the royal family for their decision and swore their allegiance to Ganon. This group soon developed into the Yiga clan and made several attempts to eliminate the hero when he had woken up. And curiously, aside from being mentioned by characters and showing up in a couple memories, not much is actually known about them. We do, however, get a better look at them through Divine Beast Far Naboris' quest, as well as their leader, and that's only until he's killed off by his own incompetence. The Champion's Ballad helped them with establishing their role in the story, along with their supposed plan of resurrecting Calamity Ganon. Before the trailer, we assumed that this was referring to the Calamity Ganon from the first game, but perhaps this plot involved the resurrection of the Gerudo King himself. Perhaps that Calamity Ganon that laid ruin to the land of Hyrule was only a step in that overall plan.
One of the most interesting parts about the trailer comes from the figure that is presumably being held down by a sort of seal. There have been many theories circulating the internet regarding the identity of this individual, the most logical one being Ganondorf. There are several traits connecting this corpse to the Gerudo King, as the wall drawings appear to reference Phantom Ganon. While he wasn't actually Ganondorf, this boss had both a trident and horse when fought within the Forest Temple. Other YouTubers have also made direct connections to the Ganondorf we see in Twilight Princess, such as the chest wound and facial features. But this raises an interesting question. What were we fighting in the first game? What was Calamity Ganon? From the trailer, we can see what appears to be Malice leaking from his chest, and it implies that what we battled in the first game wasn't actually Ganon. Back when I did my Malice theory, I had theorized that Calamity Ganon wasn't actually the evil King Ganon. My take on it was that Malice was the real antagonist, taking control of the Gerudo warrior and turning him into the monster known as Calamity Ganon. Though, now that we have seen the trailer, it's very likely that Ganondorf has maintained control for all this time. In this case, was Calamity Ganon simply a puppet used to keep the hero at bay, while the real one could recover? For all we know, the final boss could have just been a more powerful Blight. Because of his restraint, he manipulated his malice and was able to get revenge on the Sheikah and royal family. Hopefully. This all means that we will be able to battle the Gerudo King one final time.
Speaking of Ganondorf, there is a chance that the sequel's trailer is hinting at a final timeline placement for Breath of the Wild. Given all of the connections to the one found in Twilight Princess, as well as how the darkest games of the series reside within the child timeline, It may suggest that Nintendo's recent game will be under the same category. The sequel will supposedly be a dark Zelda game, maybe even darker than Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess. However, as of now, Breath of the Wild still falls under all three splits. And it may stay that way, even with the already mentioned connections. It is possible that the Twilight Princess Ganondorf's design was only used because the game is going to be dark compared to the first one, and we've only seen one trailer. Evidence that supports the other two timelines will most likely surface once we get more news, or even when the next trailer drops. Given how the first game was presented, the placement of Breath of the Wild will most likely remain in all three. Everything seems to be set up so that the game acts like a reboot for the series, abandoning the old timeline while possibly creating a new one, but we'll just have to wait and see.
If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that the mystery of the Great Plateau has been a recurring topic. We've covered plenty of theories, such as it being the location of the original castle town from Ocarina of Time, how it may have swapped with the Lost Woods due to development reasons, and recently have questioned the reasoning for it to be raised high off the ground. In my video going over the 10 different theories of Breath of the Wild, I mentioned how it may have been raised to conceal the 5th Divine Beast once the Sheikah were banished. And in the shot of the trailer, Hyrule Castle is seen rising upwards. Perhaps the same technology to do so was used long ago on the Great Plateau. And if the structure is floating, it could solidify the swap theory. However, I do have my doubts, as upon closer inspection, it looks more like the landmass is being pushed up in comparison to floating. It's quite interesting how one of the most mysterious areas from Breath of the Wild happens to be the very first location within the game. And while we might not get any information as to why it's elevated, some backstory on it for the sequel would be very much appreciated.
Hyrule has seen its fair share of links through the cycles of Demise's curse. Because of this, each game tends to focus solely on the current hero of that era. Sometimes past heroes will be referenced, such as the Hero of Time in Wind Waker. While the stories of past heroes has pretty much faded into legends and fairy tales, there is one that Impa speaks of. The ancient hero who had defeated the Calamity 10,000 years ago, along with the princess and Sheikah technology. The only information regarding this individual comes from the tapestry, as well as songs that were purposely left behind to assist the future hero in his journey. Almost all of these songs were connected to shrines left across the land, with the exception of the hero's cache. Instead of a dungeon, the reward for this side quest is a gold rupee, which we can assume was put there by the ancient hero. It's interesting that Nintendo would include this information, as it's not significant in any way to the main plot. But within the trailer, some information may finally tie the ancient hero to the present day of Hyrule. A hand is shown holding down the corpse of Ganondorf, which may be related to the past hero. Later on, we see the same energy being absorbed into Link's right hand. What's strange is how this ancient hero on the tapestry appears to have a greenish-yellow colour. Is this somehow related to what we see in the trailer? And will we find out more about the hero and princess who battled the Calamity 10,000 years ago? Perhaps there's more to the legend than we initially thought.
The laboratory is bizarre. A massive circular room that resides just under the sanctum, which appears to have no way in aside from the top. And this is the location where the big battle against Calamity Ganon would take place. But aside from being a convenient setting for the final battle, its purpose is unknown. We know that for some odd reason, it was taken over along with the Guardians and Divine Beasts. The interior also matches the design of that from the Master Trials. And on the walls, you can see the designs of Hyrule's terrain, including the 4 Divine Beasts. This place was definitely built by the Sheikah, but why? Given its name, it could have been used for experiments, or perhaps it had another purpose. What's even more interesting is how the library in Hyrule Castle houses another secret. You can actually see a part of the exterior wall of the laboratory within one of the hidden passageways. We know it's part of the same thing because directly facing it shows the camera pointing to where the laboratory would be, as it's located right under the sanctum. It's a very odd detail to add, so could it be implying something? I don't know. However, it would be interesting if the laboratory was somehow connected to the castle rising in the sequel's trailer. It's also possible that an entrance to the laboratory exists in the form of an elevator, similar to the ones found at shrines. The floor even has a similar circular pattern, so perhaps more will be revealed in the new game.
Breath of the Wild introduced many new elements into the Zelda formula, such as a full open world experience, the freedom of how you want to play, and new mechanics to further immerse the player. But it also abandoned many staples of the series, while others play much more prominent roles, one of which being Malice, a substance that has appeared before, though only makes its first major debut in Breath of the Wild. It is what sets the event of the game into motion, giving birth to the entity known as the Calamity Ganon. 10,000 years later, it would corrupt the technology created by the ancient Sheikah, which would destroy the kingdom of Hyrule from the inside out. Even after the passing of a century, this substance would continue to lay waste on the land, as well as maintain the control of the Guardians and Divine Beasts. And yet, as important as it is to the story of the Breath of the Wild, little is known about the substance. Games such as Skyward Sword suggest it has existed ever since the beginning of the game, as the ancient cisterns underground contains a pool of a very similar looking substance. And it's the same place that the cursed goblins reside in, which upon death will occasionally drop an evil crystal. This item is described as pure crystallized monster Malice. It's very possible that Malice is simply a physical form of emotion such as anger and hatred. The latter is even used in the name given to the final boss, Hatred and Malice Incarnate. Or, going further, the substance seen in the Zelda series could be the physical embodiment of Demise's curse. In the sequel's trailer, Malice is seen leaking from the Gerudo King's corpse, which implies that it is the source. In the first game, Malice was everywhere in the overworld, most of it residing within Hyrule Castle, almost as if it was its source. By piecing that together with the conclusion that what we see in the trailer is directly below the castle, it would make complete sense. Malice will without a doubt play a more prominent role in this game, but the question is to ask now, how will it play a more prominent role? We'll just have to wait and see.
Let's be honest, it would be a crime if I didn't include this one. The complex relationship between Link and Zelda has been talked about on several occasions. We've looked at how Zelda's love for the hero unlocked her power, whether Link had shared similar feelings, and even how Mipha tied into all of it. There really isn't much I can say regarding this one, as I have 4 other videos that dive into the topic. However, with Zelda no longer bound to the castle, it means that the sequel will give them plenty of time to develop as characters. I'm sure that there will be many touching moments between the two, though I still have my doubts as to whether we'll get any confirmation of their relationship status. Breath of the Wild 2 will most likely follow a different story structure, as the first game used a memory-based system to tell most of its story. And unless they give Link a voice, it's going to be difficult to build their relationship, as the ways both could interact with each other would be limited. One thing's for sure, I've got a feeling that my last Z-Link video isn't the final installment in the series.
This section will consist of 2 different items within the Zelda series, the Triforce and the Master Sword. The reason both share the same slot is because, while different, they are perfect examples of elements that played a much less prominent role in Breath of the Wild. Within previous Zelda games, these items had a huge impact on the overall narrative. The Triforce was the motivation behind the actions of Ganondorf, as it was his goal to obtain it so he could become the most powerful person in Hyrule. At least that's a very basic explanation of his motives. Games like Wind Waker go further into Ganon as a character, though the thing that connects each incarnation of Ganondorf is their desire for the Triforce. And yet, for some unexplained reason, the ancient relic makes no appearance in Breath of the Wild. It's seen on structures such as the Temple of Time, on some of Zelda's outfits, along with the tapestry. That last one is interesting, since it resides very close to the princess. We do see something similar in the present day, as the Triforce is shown when Zelda uses her sealing power. It's very possible that the whole relic is in the possession of the princesses of Hyrule and passed down through the bloodline. Another possibility comes from the trailer. If the hand that is sealing Ganondorf is connected to the ancient hero, that would create a Triforce of elements, so to speak. The green magic representing courage, Malice for power, and blue Sheikah technology for wisdom. Perhaps the sequel will expand more on the Triforce and why it seems to be forgotten to the royal family.
But one thing that does appear in this game is the Master Sword. However, like the Triforce, it has a much less significant role to the story. Not only can this blade run out of energy, but it's never required to defeat Calamity Ganon. There were many theories as to why it would be this way. including the last collaboration we did on this channel, though the trailer may have finally solved this compelling mystery. If Calamity Ganon really was just another one of Ganondorf's Blight creations, then it would make sense that the Master Sword wasn't needed to defeat him in the first game. And to back up this theory, in the trailer for the sequel, Link has the Master Sword with him. If this is the beginning of the game, it means that the player is forced to start with the sword. Probably because, unlike the first game, it will be required to finish off the Gerudo King once and for all. Before we cover our number 1 on this list, here are a few honorable mentions.
When you were but a small child, my dear friend called you that with the sweetest smile that ever graced our land of Hyrule.
You mean Mother?
To no surprise, the mystery of who the Zonai were and why they disappeared is something that I hope the sequel covers. Evidence of their existence is scattered throughout all of Hyrule in the form of ruins, some of which that house shrines. Given what we see in the game, it appears that they work closely with the Sheikah for the purpose of defeating Ganon. And who can forget their tribe emblem, a swirl that appears on Zonai structures, such as the exterior of the labyrinths. This exact symbol can be spotted within the fishing settlement, Lurelin Village, and implies that they may be descendants of this long-forgotten tribe. Upon completion, each labyrinth will yield a piece of the barbarian gear, an outfit said to be worn by a warlike tribe that resided within the Faron region. The tapestry shows the ancient hero, but for some odd reason his hair color happens to be a shade of red. Some have speculated that this could have been Ganondorf, but it would make a lot more sense if the hero was wearing this armor while battling the Calamity. It could also mean that the links are somehow connected to the Zonai, though as of now we don't have enough information to prove it. Regarding their disappearance, there's a lot of possible explanations. Perhaps they were wiped out by Ganondorf or even Calamity Ganon long ago, with only their ruins remaining. And from the trailer, we see a variety of said ruins, including some columns that should look familiar, along with the iconic swirl design on the walls. Since Ganondorf appears to be sealed by some sort of green magic, and the tribe's home was located just outside of the Spring of Courage, perhaps it was their magic that sealed the Demon King. Masterworks even mentions that people of the tribe were magic wielders. With this knowledge, what if the tribe had sacrificed themselves to seal the Gerudo King? It's possible, especially since these cave systems are abundant in what appears to be luminous stone, which, from in-game descriptions, is said to be from the souls of the dead. Is this connected to the Zonai's disappearance, or is it a coincidence? My hopes are that when the game arrives, we will finally have an answer. And that's 10 mysteries that Breath of the Wild 2 may finally solve. Special thanks to Commonwealth Realm for joining me on this one, and if you want to hear a theory regarding the ancient tribe, I joined them in one of their videos to try and find that answer. Special thanks to all my patrons, as I do appreciate the support. If you too want to donate, then check the link in the description to my Patreon where you can donate $1 a month, but never feel obligated to do so. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all next time.